So in this video, we're going to talk about Rob Reiner's film, The Princess Bride. Now, this is a great classic of American cinema. I think most people have seen this film. It's a beloved movie. For anybody who's not familiar with it, the plot is basically a sort of fairy tale love story romantic adventure. There's a frame story with Fred Savage. Fred Savage? Let me check real quick. Yes, Fred Savage. Fred Savage, who is a small child who's sick. His grandfather comes to read him a book called The Princess Bride, and the film is up and running. So the film is about this woman named Buttercup and a farm boy named Wesley. They have true love. He goes off to seek his fortune and gets killed by the dread pirate Roberts, who's this marauding pirate, etc., etc. Next thing we know, it's 5 years later. Buttercup is getting married inexplicably to the Prince Humperdinck, and she gets kidnapped by Vizzini, who is a Sicilian sort of criminal. Not real clear what his sort of actual occupation is necessarily, but he's a kidnapper for hire, essentially trying to start a war between the Kingdom of Florin, which is where what Prince Humperdinck rules and where Buttercup lives, and Gilder, which is just, off. Whatever. We don't care about them. Along with Vizzini, he's got his two henchmen. Inigo Montoya, a Spaniard who has dedicated himself for 20 years to the art of sword fighting so that he can avenge the murder of his father when he finds a villainous man who has 6 fingers on his right hand. And you have Fezzik. Inigo, by the way, played by Mandy Patinkin, one of the best actors of all time. Fantastic. Fezzik, the giant, incredibly strong, very, very faithful, very, very funny. Played incredibly well by Andre the Giant. So these three, Vizzini, Fezzik, and Inigo, have kidnapped Buttercup. They plan to murder her on the Gilder frontier. That's Vizzini's plan. Inigo and Fezzik, because they're not psychopaths, are not as keen on that plan, but there you go. They find themselves being pursued by an unknown masked man. Ironically enough, watching the film from 2020, where we are all supposed to be wearing masks, put your fucking masks on, people. There is a great line in The Princess Bride, because Inigo, when he's sword fighting the man in black, asks why he's wearing a mask. Fezzik asks why he's wearing a mask. So the man in black defeats Inigo, the sword master, in a sword fight. Then he defeats Fezzik in a battle of strength. And Fezzik asks why he's wearing the mask. And the man in black says, "It's just so terribly comfortable. I think everybody will be wearing them in the future." Put your fucking masks on, people. Pandemic. So after defeating the two henchmen, the man in black gets to Vizzini, who thinks of himself as a genius, smarter than Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. And so the man in black challenges him to a battle of wits, which he wins. He then takes possession of Buttercup, who's like, "You're the dread pirate Roberts, and I hate you because you murdered my true love, Wesley." And he's like, "Yeah, probably." And then she's like, I'm going to push you down a hill. By the way, during this time, they're being tracked by Prince Humperdinck, who's being an incredible fucking ass the whole time. Just fucking biggest douche bro you've ever seen. And nobody's calling him out because he's a prince. Anyway, so Buttercup pushes the man in black down a hill, and he, as he's tumbling toward his doom, yells out his secret code phrase, which is "as you wish," because we'd learned early in the film that he only, when he was on the farm, he only ever said "as you wish," and she figured out that was code for "I love you." Beautiful moment. Tugs at the heartstrings. So she pushes him down the hill. He yells his code phrase. She realizes it's him. She throws herself down the hill as well. Rather than attempting to, walk down it or slide down it, she just fucking tumbles head first. Like, whatever. I may break all my bones, but it is what it is. So they get to the bottom, and they go into the fire swamp. Spooky. The fire swamp has three great dangers. The fire spurts, which almost light her on fire. Then the lightning sand, which is basically extremely quicksand, which almost swallows her alive. And then the rodents of unusual size, which attempt to attack them, and which chew up Wesley's arm and shoulder. They make it out of the fire swamp. Prince Humperdinck is there, and he's like, I'm gonna kill you if you ain't give me my woman back. And she's like, I will go with you if you take him back to his ship and don't harm him. Humperdinck is like, totes, we'll do that. Then says to his dude, Carl Rugen, take him to the Pit of Despair. Pit of Despair not being Wesley's ship. The Pit of Despair, where we next find Wesley, is a sort of underground torture chamber hidden in a hollow tree. It's all very sort of Peter Pan and like weird whatever-y. We find out that Carl Rugen is a psychopath who wants to just like experiment on people, causing them pain, and that's like what his whole deal is. And he's invented a machine that sucks life from people in a way that I think, given the laws of physics, doesn't actually make any sense, but yeah, what are you going to do? So he tortures Wesley for a while. Then Buttercup goes to Prince Humperdinck and is like, I don't want to marry you. I am going to wait for Wesley, and then I'm going to peace out. And he's like, how about I send out 4 ships, and if Wesley doesn't come for you, rather than killing yourself, maybe you could marry me. Which I guess is a fair offer, but he doesn't actually send the ships. So, there's that. Then Buttercup finds out he didn't send the ship. She's like, I'm not marrying you. He's like, you are, because I'm the prince. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it. And she's like, I will not. At which point, Humperdinck gets really, really pissed off, goes into the Pit of Despair, and he turns the machine all the way up to 50, the maximum. Carl Rugen was only ever potentially going to go as high as 5. So that tells you that 50 is not all that good. Wesley's basically dead. But Fezzik and Inigo are reunited, and they decide that they need to storm the castle to prevent the marriage. Also, because Carl Rugen is the six-fingered man. 6 fingers. And so that's the guy that Inigo has to kill. But they can't figure out how to do it. So they realize that they need the Man in Black, who they don't know is Wesley yet. They manage to find him. by tracking down the sort of Igor character who is assisting Carl Rugen in his torturing. Then they manage to find Wesley's pretty much dead body. They take him to Miracle Max, who's just fantastic, played by Billy Crystal, I think. I'm almost 100% sure, but it's one of those things where I'm almost entirely sure I'm right, but also I feel like I might be wrong. But I'm reasonably certain it's Billy Crystal. If it's not, holler at your boy in the comments. So they take him to Miracle Max. Miracle Max is like, meh, I'm not interested. You don't have enough money, and I'm not really in the miracles game anymore. But then they're like, hey, you hate Prince Humperdinck because he fired you, and this is Buttercup's true love, so heal him and he'll stop Humperdinck's wedding. And so Miracle Max is like, you got it. So he makes a pill to bring Wesley back from almost dead. That happens. And then, long story short, they basically storm the castle. Inigo has a big sword fight where he gets stabbed like 8 times, but then ultimately kills Carl Rugen. Wesley and Buttercup are reunited. Fezzik's like, hey, I found these 4 white horses that belong to Prince Humperdinck, and since he's the villain, I stole them. Then they all ride off, and it ends with a kiss. Fred Savage is like, that was the greatest story I've ever heard. Will you come back tomorrow and read it to me again, Grandpa? And then, movie's over. So, what do I want to say about this? That's the plot summary, such as it is. The thing that I actually don't have that much to say about this film. I think it's a delightful movie with a lot of fun stuff. I think there's some incredibly fun acting, especially from Mandy Patinkin and Andre the Giant. Also Vincini, played by Sean Wallace, dedicated socialist. Up top, bro. But the thing that really struck me as I was rewatching the movie this most recent time is that Buttercup just doesn't do anything. I mean, she is so inactive. And like, I get that she's the damsel in distress, she's the Daphne from Scooby-Doo, etc., etc., but come on. I mean, like, at the beginning of the movie, when she and Wesley are on the farm, right? She's just ordering him around. Just do this random thing. Farm boy, polish my saddle. Whatever it is. And then, after she realizes she loves him, she, like, doesn't know how to relate to him as a human being. So the first time that they, like, mutually express their love back and forth, she's like, farm boy, get me that picture. Like, this picture that's literally fucking right here. He has to walk across the room to get the picture that's 3 inches from her head. Now, I get it. That's supposed to be this, like, romantic moment where they look into each other's eyes and they know they have true love and all this shit. But, like, her method of expressing her true love for him is literally, do this meaningless task for me so that I don't have to. So that's not great. But, like, as we get further on, like, she is completely passive in almost everything. Prince Humperdinck wants to marry her, and she's like, I guess so. She gets kidnapped. The one time she does 2 things she does active. I'll give her these 2 things for credit. One thing she does active, when she's kidnapped by Vincini and the others, she does try and jump off the ship. But then she doesn't even really swim for it. She just like bobs there in the ocean like an apple at Halloween until Fezzik grabs her and pulls her back into the ship. So her escape attempt is over the side of the ship. Now I'm done. So there's that. Then the other thing that she does that's semi-active is when they get out of the fire swamp. She and Wesley get out of the fire swamp, and Prince Humperdinck has a bunch of like crossbow guys surrounding them, ready to kill Wesley. She bargains for his life, although even that she doesn't do a good job, because Humperdinck is just like, yeah, whatever, I'll totally take him back to his ship. And then 3 seconds later turns to Carl Rugen as like, take him to the torture pit. So she does a shit job of that. But like, when they're in the fire swamp, she gets lit on fire. Her dress gets lit on fire. And she's basically like, well, I'll just sit on this rock. Wesley put this fire out. Then she drops into the lightning sand. Fine, I accept that. That's a tough one. Like, if you get immediately sucked down into the ground, hard to do much about that. No criticism there. But when the rodent of unusual size jumps on Wesley, he drops his sword, and she just fucking stands there and lets this rodent, like, gnaw on his arm and then attack his shoulder. The only time she makes any sort of attempt to fight this creature off is when it starts coming toward her. And even then, her first impulse is to yell for Wesley to come get the thing. She finally picks up a stick and like, don't bite my dress. I'll mildly push you away. She could have picked up the sword while Wesley was wrestling with it and just stabbed it. Just stab. That's all she could have done it. She didn't need to be trained with a sword. She didn't need to be super skillful. She didn't need to be Inigo Montoya, who spent 20 years training with a rapier. She could have just fucking jabbed the thing. But she didn't. She just stood there and watched. So, like, I get it that it's, again, the damsel in distress archetype, etc., etc., but it's such a problematic thing to have that be the heroine, to have that be virtually the only female role in the film. I mean, we get Miracle Max's wife, who basically, she's a role, I guess, but she's in there for like 2 minutes. We get the Queen, Prince Humperdinck's mother, who's basically in there for 15 seconds and is basically just like, that was a weird wedding, then walks off. Buttercup is the only real female role in the movie, and she does nothing. She is passive to the extreme, and it's not great. I mean, Joss Whedon that shit up a bit. That's all I'm saying.